Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Computer. Okay, I am here with Dr. Robert Hoffman, the president of Yosan University in Los Angeles. And we're going to talk about all kinds of topics related to acupuncture education and what's going on. So welcome, Robert. Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you. I've been really watching your podcast or your Substack, kind of grow, and it's been really informative. And I think you and I, we do see a lot of things, eye to eye, basically. And I love the data analysis because I spend most of my days, monitoring the data. So I love it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And I just started it recently, and it's been a really fun project to get into, and it's going to be really fun for 2026. And part of it is I hope to do more interviews. And thank you for reaching out to me via Substack and for initiating this conversation. So we'll just I have some questions to ask, and it can also be we can go off on some tangents if necessary. But I thought we could start with you telling the audience about your journey in acupuncture and how you ended up as the CEO at Yosan.
Yeah, I think my journey is probably, the same as so many 50-year-old white males in Chinese medicine. It starts with martial arts. I grew up in the 70s, watching Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee, and Saturday afternoon was Kung Fu theater. And I kind of just fell in love. I was an athlete already, but, I fell in love with martial arts and wanted to take karate for a long time. My parents finally let me, it's so different now, but in the 70s, like if you took karate, you were considered like a bad guy. Like it actually had like negative connotations or something. So it took a long time to convince my parents to let me do that. And then I just fell in love, of course, with all things Asian, Chinese, Japanese. I started to read like translations of poetry, a little bit of like Taoism and Buddhism, but there was no real, again, we're talking like white suburban America, New Jersey, Jewish family. Like there was no outlet for any of that. It was just like whatever I could get going to the mall and finding books at the bookstore. And that was always like now I have this huge collection. I still have the books from like when I was 10 years old. But there was no, of course I didn't know any acupuncturists. I didn't know anybody in Chinese medicine. My martial arts, kind of figureheads were teaching karate class. There was no outlet for it other than my own passion and interest. So I stayed all through my teens. I was really deeply into meditation and karate. And then by the time I got to college, it was like, well, that's cool. It's fun, but there's no career to that. So I chose another safe career, which was music. It worked out for me, but not a smart career choice, in hindsight. So I went to college. I got a degree in business, and right out of my undergrad, I went to a music school it was like a 2-year associate's program shoved into 14 months. And that school is actually blown up. That would be a really interesting take. That would be a case model we should look at offline. Full Sail University it is a music school. It's a production school where you learn everything from video and music production. Now they do like computer, like games and graphics and all kinds of different technology things. So when I did that program, and then right out of school, this is like 93, I got a job at a recording studio in New York City, and was making $225 a week, 6-day work weeks, 12 hours a day, no overtime, no vacation pay. It was torture. But within a few months, I tend to move very fast. I tend to work really hard and just kind of drive things very quickly. So within a few months, I was working. I got to work on the Michael Jackson session. My idol of all time, an engineer named Bruce Swedien, who became my mentor. And then working with Michael over like a 3-year period, I worked with Quincy Jones and Janet Jackson and her producers, Jeb and Lewis, who were huge idols of mine. And then literally every famous musician you could think of in that mid 90s, from Aretha Franklin and Al Jarreau and Anita Baker, all the way through like David Foster, Babyface, Notorious B.I.G. It was an endless, kind of like
Wow.
unbelievable time period. And that was the early part of my career. So that really shaped who I was as a musician, who I became as a producer, really just how I look at the world. Because those days, those were tough. I mean, I generally worked 100 to 120 hours a week, nonstop from the time I was, I guess, 24. So it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
And then my big, as a producer songwriter, kind of my big turning point where I went from like a staff position to like a producer role was with Christina Aguilera. A good friend of mine was working with her, and I was working with Quincy and Michael at the time. And a good friend of mine kept calling and saying, I've got this like 15-year-old girl. She was on the Mickey Mouse Club, and I really think you should work with her. And I was like coming off these huge sessions, and again, look at the charts back then. It's Whitney Houston, Toni Braxton, like kind of, what we would call R&B, but it's kind of it was already adult contemporary music at the time. There was no Backstreet Boys, no NSYNC, no Britney at the time. So I kind of honestly like pushed it away for like probably a year or longer, because I'm like, what do I do with this, 15-year-old singer? And then finally, I just had a break in my schedule, and I was like, all right, send me what you have. Send me a videotape. I got a VHS in the mail of her singing live.
Oh.
And of course, I was blown away. It was totally incredible. And she flew out maybe a month later. We recorded 5 songs in 5 days, and she got her record deal with RCA within a couple months. And then I continued to work with Christina up until like 2004, 2005.
Wow.
So it was that period, let's say 92 to 2006. About 14 years, just completely embedded in the music industry. But somewhere the transition really started to happen about halfway through. I was out of shape. I was in poor health. I was obviously working too much, not sleeping, living on Advil, raspberry Snapple, and chocolate muffins. I was about 20 pounds heavier than I am now. And, I eventually found my way back to martial arts. I found my way to Kung Fu and Tai Chi, started seeing an acupuncturist for back pain because I'm sitting in a chair 20 hours a day. And So that began to shift how my brain was working. It's like, you can't do this forever. And then subsequent to that, of course, is the shift in the music industry. And this is, I think we'll get back to Chinese medicine. The music industry began to fall apart. There was consolidation. There was a change in the delivery models. There was a huge change in budgets. And the music industry in early 2000s, Napster, the early days of streaming started to hit. And I was in my mid-30s, already exhausted, thinking, when this falls apart, how am I going to make a living? Is there anything else in my life that I do or that I want to do that I would feel comfortable making a living at? And I was doing Tai Chi with one teacher and Kung Fu with another teacher, and both of them were acupuncturists. And then I started doing Qigong with another teacher, and he was a medical Qigong practitioner. So I was like, that's kind of where I want to go. I don't know how to get there, but I think that's what I want to do. And the real switch for me was the tsunami in Southeast Asia. When that hit Sri Lanka, my Tai Chi teacher and I, we flew down with a small group of us, all martial artists. We flew down to Sri Lanka a few times, and we started to we did relief work. We dug wells, we hung electrical wires, we created a paper recycling plant where we were recycling all of the waste paper from the relief effort and turning it into paper products. And then we were flying it here to Los Angeles to sell in gift shops and yoga studios, and then bringing that money back to Sri Lanka. So we created, we're trying to create not just dump money off and leave. We're trying to create economic systems to help Sri Lankans rebuild. And I remember so vividly the moment that I realized this is what Chinese medicine is. This is what acupuncture can be. We were in a Western clinic in the eastern provinces of Sri Lanka. There was an MD there. There were all kinds of empty boxes from UNICEF and all the various American Red Cross, different relief agencies, and they were empty. And he had a clinic full of people waiting like for the next delivery. Like, we're like, what's happening here? And he's like, well, I don't have any medicine. I can't, nothing I can do. So we're like, well, how are you treating people? And he said, well, if you have a stomach ache, I give you a Pepsi. If you have a headache, I give you a Pepsi. He said, I have more Pepsi than I know what to do with. So everybody gets a Pepsi. And we were like, what's happening here? Are you kidding? So my teacher like just starts going down the row of the patients in the chair. What's wrong with you? Oh, I have like digestive issues. And he's like, here, come here. And he takes me and he like puts my hands on some acupuncture points and is like, hold these for 5 minutes. Then he goes to the next one. It's like, what's wrong with you? Oh, I have shoulder problems. And he like, does some kind of like Tuina bone setting thing and puts the person's shoulder in place. And he literally just walks down the line and treats every single person in the clinic. And, some percentage of them got up and they're done. And they're like, oh my God, I feel better. Thank you so much. And I was like, man, that's cool that you could fly into a country with no supplies, no medication, and find ways to at least make people feel better today. So I came home from that first trip and I was like, that's it. That's what I'm doing. So it took time to kind of unwind my music life. I was married at the time. We ended up getting divorced. And then it took almost 4 years for me to start Chinese medicine school. And I came to Yosan here in Los Angeles to get my master's.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. That is an arc. That is so much.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I think because I was thinking in my own background, there's a connection with Aikido, so Japanese martial art.
Yep.
And I think a little bit of a similarity of like how can we help people tangibly in a short amount of time. And I think it's also like, do we really need all of these extra systems and things? They're nice, they're good, but they're not always contextually available. So then it kind of, I think it does fall on the practitioner to creatively help people. And I just read about the WHO doing a big initiative, starting a big initiative with traditional medicine. And I think they're seeing and acknowledging some of those same things, that it's like these, the way that medicine is practiced contextually in a culture is like readily available and people access it and it helps them directly, and it's affordable too, and you don't need as many of the external inputs coming in.
I mean, I think it's when we talk about TCM in America, there's definitely a backlash in the last 15 years or so against this branded traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, because it's a post-communist, synthesis of what truly was traditional Chinese medicine as practiced, through all of the different demographic areas, minority populations, regional differences. Like TCM is truly a synthesis of historical and regional information so that it can be taught in a synthesized way and allow for practitioners to go out and treat people. But there's a backlash against that because it's, potentially Maoist or communist, or it's reductive. But I also look at it because you just kind of triggered a little bit. I also think in some sense, like that 1954 shift to TCM is probably, it probably saved traditional medicine in a sense, because it gave it all of these people training. in a way that they would not have had if it were not institutionalized in that moment.
Mm.
And we look at it and say, well, the communist government at the time did it because they, of course, they imprisoned, they killed Western medical doctors. You know, there was a real shortage of Western trained physicians at the time. But there's also the realization that we do have this medicine, we do have this traditional medicine.
Mm.
It doesn't take that long to train people to go out and treat many of the basic disorders that they're going to run into. It really becomes like the WHO is figuring out today. It really is a medicine, you know, of the people, for the people, and it doesn't require, you know, $5,000 MRIs and $1,000
Right.
X-rays and all of that. And you can make a difference literally right now. You
Yeah.
know? So I think, I don't know if I'm saying it well enough, but I do think there's kind of this connection to that training of barefoot doctors and early TCM to perhaps what the WHO is looking at today.
Yeah, that's I think a little bit of the lens that I take. I haven't gotten deep into it, read a lot about it, and it's still like I think it's a new initiative, but I was very like glad to see it because I'm like, yeah, like acupuncture and naturopathic medicine, in in various forms all over the world. Like that's really exciting for me. So I'll be kind of watching that, and I think also it touches on like uh, this is a big thing in just education, but higher education. It's like, what should you be able to do with knowledge?
Yeah.
What should you be able to do at the end of a training program? And there's learning objectives and things like this. But I think a big part of that is what context are you likely to be in? Because that kind of conditions your ability, right? Like you said, like
Yeah.
if there's no MRI machine, it's not available. Like, should I know how to interpret
Yeah.
MRIs realistically as a beginning? And we're talking about, I think, entry level too. This is a big thing too. Is like that. What does it take to get your foot in the door, right? Like, what's the ante, and then what can be done as continuing education later on, and like you said, in the music industry, all that technology was changing things, and that's happened. I think that's coming for like higher education now too. It's like, well, if you can do it as a vetted continuing ed micro credential certificate,
Yep.
right? Then why should you have to do it within your initial degree program? But that's like that can be difficult to figure out and work out, and there's money involved too, because it's like who gets to be paid for the hours in the training program and who is approved to do that. And then there's the silos too. I think we talked about this previously of like, you know, if you were going to take a micro credential on image interpretation, then which group would you take it from? Even though this is image interpretation, like it should be. So there's these things of like standardization versus creativity. And in fact, that ACAHM is doing the standards revision right now.
Yep.
So right in that process.
I'm doing it.
You're doing it.
Yeah, I'm on the standards committee.
Oh, okay. Great.
Oh, so yeah, I guess that might help too. So how did I get where I am now?
Yeah.
So I go to Chinese medicine school 2010. I've already got a bachelor's and associate's degree. I come to Chinese medicine from having had a successful career. So I have some pretty strong opinions about how things should be.
Mm-hmm.
I graduate in 2015. I go get my DAOM at 5 branches. I start about a year later. I graduate in the fall of 2018. And honestly, like, because I was really trying to retire and get out of the music business, I thought Chinese medicine would be my ticket out of Los Angeles. I was like, I've always felt if you're not in the film and music business, like, why would you live here, right? Like, it's beautiful, the weather's great, it's sunny, and 65 today, but like, there's so many other places to live. And I met my wife in acupuncture school, and we were kind of on the same, idea. Like, maybe we'll at least move to San Diego. Maybe we'll get out of California. But in that last trimester of my doctoral program, I started to get calls and emails and interest from schools saying, there's a dean position and there's an academic position, or come teach and all of that. So, looking for signs, every acupuncturist, you're in your final trimester, you're like, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
I was looking around. At the time, I was working at an herbal company, Dragon Herbs. I'd been there for about 2.5 years, right out of my master's program. We had a small, my wife and I were seeing patients at 2 different offices. But my wife and I talked a lot about it, and I had some really strong opinions of what could change in acupuncture education, Chinese medicine education, coming, from a really strong undergraduate program and success in the music industry. I thought I could do it differently and a little bit better. So I took the position as the dean of the doctoral program at Yosan. And when I got here, we only had 11 students in the DAOM. It wasn't my predecessor, who's a mentor of mine and a good friend. She was kind of struggling with like how to make it grow and how to make it interesting to today's market, to today's students. She's kind of the first generation of acupuncturists. So we had her and I had a lot of talks. Came into the position, and within like a year, we had doubled it to 22. And over the next couple of years, even through COVID, we've stayed between 20 and 30 doctoral students. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the sweet spot for that program, because I want our students to be doing research. We do pilot studies, feasibility studies. We do a few systematic reviews because I do think they're important as well, but I'm really pushing the research portion of that. And I want the doctoral students to have lifelong mentors. So I need small faculty to student ratios to build these cohorts into something that lasts beyond the 2 years. So COVID hits, of course, and enrollment at Yosan drops, continues to drop, of course. I think you've covered this, but 2014 is the high point in Chinese medicine education. We're up around, I think, close to between 8,000, 9,000 students. We come out of COVID and we're at 5,400 across the entire education industry. I think it drops almost to 5,200 somewhere in that time frame. There's a good ACOM chart that's publicly available. We could put that up somewhere. And Yosan was not immune to that, of course. By the time summer of 22 rolls around, I think we're down to less than 100 students. About 20 to 25 in the doctoral program, and maybe 70, 75 in the master's program. So the school, the board of trustees, who our founders are part of, really knew they knew they had to make a change, or gracefully just say, we've got 1 year and, we're closing our doors. So through interviews with the board of trustees, and in kind of marketing meetings and all these meetings we'd had throughout 22, my name came to the forefront of like, look, if we're going to do a change, now is the time to do it. And we think Rob is, the guy to do it. I was, of course, nervous, because who wants to be the last president? It's like someone handing you the captain's hat as they jump off the sinking ship.
Do you get to write that letter at the end?
God. But I knew that I had a very different approach than the previous administration. I knew I had different life experiences. And I think I have a different take than a lot of the other administrations across the country. So I said, let's do it. Our founder, Dr. Mao, so they promoted me to chief academic officer for about a 6-month period, so I could start to rearrange faculty and department chairs and, do that kind of internal structural change. And then I became CEO in the spring of 23 and president in the spring of 24. We did just a complete transformation in the administration. enroll. I mean, just for figures, I guess, to see where we're at. As I mentioned, we were below 100 in the fall of 22. Coming into January of 26, we have 300. So it was a pretty remarkable growth.
So that's like 200% growth from 100 to 300.
Yeah,
double on them.
And then our clinic went from under $1 million in revenue to like, I think we'll be at 2 million this year. Public programs, our CEUs went from like a $30 to $40,000 a year, up close between $85,000 and $100,000 a year. Donations are holding really steady. We're nonprofit, of course, so building that endowment, getting annual donations, that holds pretty steady. Thankfully, our portfolio has been really rock solid since the close of the pandemic, so we're able to take advantage of that. But now I hope and feel that we're stabilizing. My role kind of shifts. So the last 2.5, 3 years has been working on faculty, working on, obviously learning objectives, curriculum outcome, building the brand, of course, and building our administrative team. Now my role is kind of switching a little bit, about seeing patients in 2026. Up until now, I've been doing the administration stuff, teaching in the master's and doctoral program, and seeing patients. And then also teach Tai Chi on the side outside school. So now my role is really switching. No, I won't see patients in 2026. I'm not teaching. I'm going to teach 1 or 2 classes over the year. And my role really comes around to really what a president of a school should be doing. Nonprofit schools, of course, fundraising, creating partnerships, building an endowment, so that we can do all the things that you and I are talking about, which is, potentially lowering tuition, streamlining programs, making school more affordable, and providing strong partnerships for job growth after school. Like that's where my entire focus is now on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I have so many thoughts about that. That is, I mean, a couple of things. One is that you said that, the overall enrollment after the pandemic was actually down at about like 5,200 or somewhere.
5,200.
Yeah. But then I think the latest chart showed that it's at like 6,000. So it's actually gone up since the pandemic overall. So that's actually, a positive trajectory. And I kind of like, I'm so like, because when I look at the data, it's like kind of makes me pessimistic and like what's happening. So I need the like positive story. So I appreciate that, because it's not just homogenous across.
No, you're not alone. So don't feel any remorse about that at all. You're right.
Well, I think and I think it's saying like, okay, what are there's good things happening within this whole story. And then the enrollment growth, which I think is so key. And also like the ND schools, the 3 major ones, and these acupuncture programs are so tiny and niche that like a lot of times they don't even really show up on the radar of like higher ed
100%
people. Like it doesn't even like make sense to higher ed analysts. Like what is this? And so I think it's a big puzzle I have is like, well, what makes sense, right? Like you said, like, ideally the president role is doing these things, but in reality, they have to do a lot of things most of the time, like 3 different jobs.
at least.
So, what's that?
At least.
Yeah. And I think it's also like taking the wider higher ed sector and saying like, okay, what are the insights that make sense for like these niche, small institutions. And I did that in like quotes, but like institution can be like so tiny or like so huge, like the budget. But they are institutions.
Medicine.
Yeah. And it's it's going to definitely look different in different contexts. While at the same time, I think that a lot can be gained through comparisons and looking at the wider sector and like what's happening to, let's say, small private nonprofits, right? It's like, okay, well, let's narrow it down to that group first, and then let's look at what's happening with these kind of niche graduate school programs.
I think you bring up a great point, and it's something that I do constantly, because when I was in acupuncture school and in this last 15 years of my TCM professional engagement, like, we continue to want to build systems without looking at what everybody else has done.
Mm-hmm.
There are people with way more experience, way more education, and way more money that have built these systems. So it's not to say that we can't do our own thing, but why are we at least not engaged with, like, well, what do their benchmarks look like? And this is what we're doing in the standards committee right now at ACOM, is like we've looked at all these other standards to say, well, how are they measuring their graduation success? How are they measuring engagement? How are they measuring all these things? So what I have found, I became a member of ACOM, I think it was the pandemic. I want to say it was August of 2020. Yeah, so we're going on 4.5 years now. 5 years. What I keep trying to first educate my peers on, the staff to begin with, and then kind of the peers outside our university, is there are all these systems out there, and there are all these benchmarks out there, and why are we operating in a silo and pretending that somehow we're immune to that? And I think, looking at tuition, operating revenue, and expenses, like, because this happened at Yosan, to be very frank, like, we have an endowment, but the measure of our success is whether or not tuition revenue covers operating expenses. Now, that seems, from a business standpoint, like a very normal system of measure. But when you look at other nonprofit schools, there are not many colleges as small as us, but at least, say, in the 2,000 student population and under, they all have spend rates on their endowments of, 15%, 20%, 30%, 40% even. So my thought on it is we should be using, program revenue. For us, that's tuition, public programs, and clinic. We should be looking at program revenue against operating expenses as a benchmark, as a key benchmark to operational efficiency. But donations and building the endowment, which is what so many college presidents spend all of their time on, if we're truly going to operate as a nonprofit, that should be a huge, huge focus. Because if we could get, what is it? UCI got $100 million from Sam Welly. City of Hope just got a $10 million check, in their oncology program. Like, if we spent as much time building our endowments, and then we could fund scholarships, we could fund endowed chairs, we could fund entire departments, the way that all of these other colleges operate, then we're not in this tuition race anymore.
Right.
And so that's part of my strategy there, is increasing our scholarships through fundraising. But that doesn't feel like a business plan to some people. You know what I mean? That it feels like so amorphous, like, oh, you're going to get somebody to donate. Well, yeah, this happens literally every single day. In
right.
So in a sense, I feel like some acupuncture schools, Yosan included, have operated as nonprofits or declaring themselves nonprofits, but are still operating on this, how much can we charge? If we haven't made our operating expenses, let's increase revenue. Let's increase tuition.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we know that across all higher education, that's often the case.
Yeah.
But in our schools that are so small and with typically tiny endowments or maybe even no endowment, that's been this 15-year strategy. If we can't make operating expenses, keep raising tuition. I want to go I want to go backwards. I want to reduce tuition. I want to reduce the program bloat and then fund, greater numbers of scholarships through our endowment, through building the endowment. Because that ultimately will make acupuncture education more accessible. But it's a whole different mind. It's a real shift, when you're talking to a board of trustees or you're talking to your accreditors when they do their site visits or you're talking to your accountants when they're doing the audit. It's like, it's hard to get people's mind out of that.
Yeah.
Increase prices till you're not in the red anymore. It's like, no, that's not how markets work. We know that. That's business.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, for sure. Because it's just like the siloing thing, I think, is really important to talk about and be aware of. And like, not only siloing in like health modalities, but siloing in terms of organizational governance and funding. And to, yeah, it is because when I've started to I've looked at like a bunch of audits and I read higher ed news all the time, and so it's just like orders of magnitude, right, greater, and these are like very different um, institutions, but at the same time, it could be proportional to the size of the institution, and that's why I get it's frustrating to like not see, open conversation about these types of things, right? Like by let's say I consider some institutions like anchor institutions because it's kind of like it's all we've got. That's what we got. Like we got like 3 ND schools in the United States. Like that's pretty much it. There's smaller programs around, but we have these schools, and then there's even just there's 45, right, accredited 46, but they're gonna be 45 soon because one's closing. Right, there's those 45 programs. That's a small number too. It's at least like very manageable, right? You can see it as a group, um, and to just to have conversations about well, okay, what's a reasonable level of contributions for our size of school, right? That's why I like the sort of like data and the visual, right? It's like, what are the contributions over the past 5 years? What's a realistic goal? Because there's some kind of disconnect between like the passion that people have for, let's say, complementary health, acupuncture, naturopathic medicine, and this idea of like demand being out there, which isn't very amorphous and I think has to be kind of actualized into a business model and an economic system. Um, but there's this disconnect between like the passion of people want this to succeed. And I even think people will give a lot of money to see greater health in society, and that people are very open to complementary health. They go to practitioners. We know that from the data. So like there's all this data, and I think vibe and anecdotal evidence that people want more of um, people want more acupuncture, people want more um, Chinese medicine, people want more naturopathic medicine available, and yet the economics of it seem to have never like clicked in like a virtuous feedback loop, right? Let's say that some small nonprofits they have that strong alumni, right, donation loop back in. They have like networks of like where it's like our graduates, like we know that a certain percentage of our graduates get hired in these employment opportunities. And I just think that not speaking about that and um, not laying out those goals, right? Like, I mean, you just did you laid out like some goals, right? As far as like you looked at the past, cited it, and it's like, okay, here's what's realistic, right? So it's like when you say it, it makes sense to me as like a general like direction. I can feel like a directionality to it. Um, which is not what I get from like a lot of programs in schools and from like professional organizations either. Because I would also put that to them too. Like every state association, right, should be doing this sort of thing, in my opinion, as far as like, here's our data from the past, here's our top goals, and here's what if we have a strong specific goal, like here's what we need this much money to do.
Yeah.
Do you guys, as a group, do we want to do this, right? I mean, my big question is like, okay, so do we want to preserve this, right? Do we want to preserve naturopathic education in the United States? Do we want to preserve acupuncture credentials in the United States? Like, okay, so like, what does that look like numbers wise?
Yeah.
But like it's a full-time job, as you know, right? So like we have to also like fund and designate people. We have to put the right people in the right roles and give them some creative agency with like a living wage to get this stuff really flowing. So those are all my thoughts that are running through my head when you start talking in those ways, which I appreciate and I enjoy.
I agree that I mean there's no denying that the schools historically have kind of, worked competitively, not worked well together. When you look at something like the Council of College, I think, maybe 2/3 of the schools are even members.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the organization that all of the school presidents and deans, anybody who's a stakeholder to school, can join the meetings and talk about, these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And ACOM is its own, separate thing. They do a report to the colleges, but they're, because they're the accreditor, there's obviously some,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be some disconnect between those agencies.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you said so many good things. I'm trying to figure out where to dive in. Let's go from an ACOM perspective, and I'm the vice chair of the commission, but of course I'm not going to speak like for ACOM, but I'll kind of my, impression. I joined that because I felt like as a dean at the time, like I'd kind of pushed everywhere I could, I had made the changes internally, but I wasn't getting a lot of, I reached out in those first few years to a lot of other doctoral programs, and said like, hey, we're flying this teacher to the West Coast, in the month of October. Do y'all want to split, the airfare at least, or the hotels? Do you want to organize something so maybe they can do like a West Coast tour? We're close. Why don't we just put all our doctoral students together in a room for a weekend? It'll be a huge professional collaboration. They're all going to have the same teacher anyway. What's the difference if she teaches this weekend and next weekend? Who cares? Let's do something, and maybe research comes out of it, and it'd just be like crickets. Thankfully, that's changing post-COVID. But pre-COVID, it was kind of like, Urgh. So when I got the invitation to join ACOM, I was like, all right, well, this is a different tack. Maybe I can start to. I've pushed everywhere I can internally. Let me see if I can do an end run and see where I can start to make the shifts. And I realized that I didn't know half as much about accreditation as I thought I did. And I don't think I went into ACOM internally like I was gonna shake it up, but I definitely had a little like, it's those people, and I'm coming in to talk to those people. But instead, it's been something completely different. The vast majority of people that I can say all of the people that are currently in ACOM, the vast majority of people I've met who've been associated with ACOM, at least since I've been in the profession, are really amazing people. There's a lot of this. It takes a lot of time to be. We're about to go into we have a meeting in February, and we'll probably start to receive all the school reports that we have to review for that February meeting, maybe in the next week or so. it's hours and hours and hours of pouring through data, looking at how schools do their assessments, looking at their finances, and then coming together in February and August um, to look at all of those reports and discuss them with all of the commissioners. So every school sends in a self-study. That self-study then is read by a site review team. They go to the school, they do the review. They basically said, well, you wrote this, but you're doing this. So that doesn't back off. Or you said this and you do it. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So then that gets another report, and that's what goes to the full commission and we go through every single school. Schools that have great reports and there's not, it's like nice and fast and easy. And then there are schools that are struggling, and, you might spend hours going through this report. And if you're the review team, it could be days to get through a report. So it's a really incredible group of people, doing a job that honestly, it's really miserable sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's gut wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
Right. When you see a school that's not doing well, not whatever it is, whether it's academically, financially, administratively, like it's like, because you want the schools to be successful. Like, I don't want to be the only school in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I just reached out to Don Gook in the last couple months and said, let's do something. I don't know what it is yet, but let's do something. Let's do research together. Let's share clinics. Let's share each. I don't care, but let's do something together.
Yeah.
That's what makes a healthy ecosystem. So it's the same thing at ACOM. Like when you're getting like a really negative report, it's just like, you're like, why can't you do this? Please fix this thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not always possible. But which comes back to the ND school thing too, which is what I was thinking. Like I don't know the current number. It's close to 50 Chinese medicine schools right now. I don't know the exact number because it is changing. The really hard question, I think you've brought this up in your Substack, is what is the right number? And that is like, again, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking conversation to have. Like, nobody wants a school to close. Nobody wants those administrators, those faculty to lose their jobs, their livelihood, and nobody wants those students to be disrupted in the midst of their education.
Yeah.
But if we look at the arc, and that's where that chart of the enrollment is really key. If we look at and if we could get a even further back look, this is the kind of nerdy stuff I do at night at Yosan with all of our finances going back to 89. If we could really get a deep dive and look at the growth in the growth and decline of enrollment from the earliest reportable data, 75, 76, right? All the way through 2025. What do those curves look like? What does the curve look like of the number of schools and the number of programs over time?
Yeah.
Right. And then what is it, as something you already alluded to, if we could quantify the level of participation in Chinese medicine and acupuncture over time, what does that look like? And my feeling, I've said this in other interviews, my thought is that the acceptance of acupuncture is pretty linear, over time from the early 70s to now. I remember when I started school, they were saying like 3 to 5% of the population engages in acupuncture. Now and these are anecdotal. I don't know where they come from, so I don't have a data point for it. But now they say 5 to 7% of people engage in acupuncture. Well, if we could measure that over time, there's probably, pretty linear. It's not this, right? It's a pretty linear acceptance model. But education goes like this: wham,
right,
right, and somewhere in that arc of the number of schools and the number of graduates, somewhere that's going to hit the level of acceptance in the marketplace. I don't know where that is. If I knew, I'd be the savior probably, but somewhere they're going to collide. And that will be the number of schools and the number of graduates we need. Now, the question is, no one knows where that is. But I'll probably have, people calling me for this, but I don't think it's 50 schools. That's
I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's what I would say is. I mean, my prediction is that schools will a good chunk will close over the next few years because of all these pressures and all the changes that are happening.
And I think your analysis of like what SCUHS is doing, is spot on. Like, if we take, let's not name any name. Let's just say like we have a school, it has a central campus. That campus is obviously at least at break even, hopefully profitable. And then they decide to open a satellite campus. Well, how much of that administrative duty is shared, right, from the main campus? So we're not hiring another CEO, CFO, COO, accounting department, all of those things. Like that's centralized, and now this other campus, it has a satellite clinic. Maybe it has a campus dean. It has shared faculty. You're doing online classes. Well, that can drive the mission into a whole other place that never could have supported a whole acupuncture school.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So I think that is the future. That is the model. And it's just a question of how many schools, are able to support that and do that. And then we look at, this is also, I'm going to try to say this carefully, like, I can say this, who we were as a profession pre-pandemic, right? Not who we are as a profession post-pandemic, and who our founders and administrators were in the very earliest days of this profession. It's got to look different post-pandemic. So I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing these legacy schools close. It's not just the decline in enrollment. It's, do we understand our student population? Do we understand patient population? Because if we can't adjust and transform to that, who are we serving? And I recently went back to the Steve Jobs interview from '97, where he talks about, the difficulty in transforming the computer industry at the time. And he said Apple's mission was very different. It was all about, we start from the consumer experience, and then we work backwards towards code. He said everybody else is writing code and trying to define the consumer experience. What's the end result? So for us, what's our end result? Well, clinic, of course, patient outcomes, right? Students is more complicated because, of course, we have learning objectives, program objectives, outcomes, all of these things. We have to measure that. But we can turn out the smartest, best students in the world. And if they don't have a clinical practice, then we've completely failed. So our outcome measure has to be our graduate success. And there we're also stuck because, when we do an alumni survey, like we're happy to get 10% back. That's miserable. So that the study you mentioned, which is so good and everybody should read, is the NCCAOM job task analysis that came out. I mean, there's so much. I don't even think people have spent enough time in that data. I love it. I mean, it's sitting on my desktop right there. I'm like, give me more data, because it's really fascinating, and that should be shifting your curriculum design, faculty hiring, your syllabi, your program learning objectives, your course, like that. In there is so much data. If you're willing to pour through it, if you can't pour through it, just give it to ChatGPT, but literally pour through it, because that tells us. I mean, what was it? 5,000 or 6,000 people respond to that survey. The largest professional survey we've ever had and ever done. And there's a lot of cool analysis to be done in there if you're willing to do it, and it absolutely should shift your program. I already had like the major epiphany this morning driving here. I'm like, oh, why are we not doing that? That's and sometimes they're so like, they're just moments. Why we've been ignoring that, and I think it comes down to, it comes down to a little bit of ego, right? Like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I got this. Or my students are successful. I don't have to pay attention. Like, there's a lot of, I don't know, hubris in there, but it's just like, if you're willing to look at data, we didn't mention, I'm finishing my PhD next year in pharmacology. So I'm like,
in what's the subject?
In pharmacology. So I'm doing research in China that
Okay.
utilizes Chinese herbs during standardized chemotherapy and radiation. So how can
Mm.
Chinese herbs ameliorate the side effects, specifically of chemotherapy? That's where
Mm.
the focus is. So they can make chemotherapy more efficient, more effective, and perhaps even shorten treatment times.
Mhm.
So my world is 1,000% in research and data, looking at mice model and HPLC and mass spec and all of this kind of stuff. So when I get a hold of something like that NCCOM report, I'm just like, here's all the data I want.
Yeah.
When I became
Well,
president of Yosan, it was pull the binders off the wall and open it
yeah.
up and see, let me see inside this thing so I can figure out where it can change. And as you mentioned, become more efficient, become more
Mhm.
affordable, become more accessible, because that's the only way it survives.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that data set because I think one challenge is that when you have a lot of, let's say, small clinics or solo practitioners, and a lot of so here sort of a message that I received while going to through my naturopathic program was kind of like, oh, you learn this, but then when you're done, you get to do what you want. You get to practice in the way that you want to
God, yes.
practice. And so the which is like, okay, yeah, yeah, sort of. But I think there's a real issue with like, if there's no larger employment sector that's saying we need graduates who can do this, this, and this. If you have if your graduates can do this, we will hire your graduates. We don't really have that at scale.
Yeah.
But I think that report could fill fill that role. And I don't know that we really have anything like that that I've come across in naturopathic medicine. But it is again like these a lot of little silos. And so there's no like large buckets of employable skill sets that where you could have like a large institutional employer that would come to a job fair
Mhm.
for students who are about to graduate and they'd say like, wow, every year like we hire 5 people. We've spoken with the curriculum team at the school and we know that you are ready to work. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have that. Maybe some people don't want that, right? Like they're like, well, I do want to do the solo practice thing, but that feedback loop is not there. That conversation around that virtuous cycle where then it's like, okay, you're gainfully employed, you have some stability. Now you feel comfortable signing up for an annual donation, a monthly donation,
Totally.
right? At the school and you have that connection, that mentorship of someone you've worked on a research project with. Um, I don't, I think that's a real broken. It's a shame. It's too bad because I think that's kind of where a lot of the discussion around outcomes kind of it kind of deals in that as far as like, do you need to get all this training? What do you actually need to have um, a job, a living wage job that provides you with some stability and like a role in society, like kind of at large, so that you can then do these other creative, um, more, let's say, elective things that you want to do. Um, so yeah, so that I'm glad we got kind of talked about that outcome piece. I think that's like a huge. I want to talk more about that and think about that and email you about that. But what do you think about these the upcoming loan caps as the challenge to like um I think just the essentially the tuition revenue of programs because it's capped. I don't know if you want to we don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
What program is what going to get what cap.
Yeah.
Um but it is going to be capped, so it's less it's less than unlimited.
Yep.
It's less than like up to the cost of attendance. It's there's the professional degree um cap $50,000 per year. And we don't know what programs are going to get added into that, what doctoral professional degrees or just professional degrees, graduate professional degrees will be added. But then there's also the lower cap of $20,500 per year. So I don't know. I think it's a big part of the conversation that I try to write about. It's a big like impending thing. So like, what do you think about it? Where is it at in the conversations you're having?
So I'm glad you're writing about it. Because the world needs to know that this is happening.
Yeah.
I can say internally amongst all of the, the schools and the profession, there's of course, a lot of fear because we just don't know where it's going to sit.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of letters and emails and meetings and all of that. So if you don't see public facing conversation, it's not that anybody's ignoring it. There's a ton of internal data and commenting going on. Where can I start? So we just finished kind of an internal analysis. We looked at I looked at the last 7 years as a model, and I looked at this last year as a model, and then I've looked at this fall and the incoming class for January as models. So I'm trying to, again, coming back to data.
Yeah.
Like, let's not freak out. Give me data first, and then I'll freak out. I have plenty of time to freak out when I wake up, with my heart pounding at 3 a.m., which is how I deal with anxiety. But let me get data first.
Yeah.
That I can see really where we're hit. So of course, for the health of the institutions, everybody up until July 1st, 2026 is grandfathered in. Right.
Yeah.
So you've got whatever happens September 1st, we don't fall off a cliff. If the trimester system, your incoming class is September 1st. It's not, theoretically, it's not like all of a sudden you don't have anybody enrolled and your program falls off. But if you're coming into September and you're not at break even or you're not profitable, right? What's your margin of what would that, your margin of error, your margin of students that, what percentage could you lose in enrollment where that really has a negative effect on you? So if you're right at break even and 70% of your students are near the cap or on grad plus, September is devastating for you.
Yeah.
If you're profitable and, you've got maybe, 5 to 7% of your students coming in grad plus, and you haven't set up any kind of private financing or any kind of other loan options for them, how long can you ride that as these, what do we call them? Full enrollment, full tuition students, right? As they tend to graduate, this other number is creeping up to you again.
Yeah. Right.
So like every school is going to have a different, they're going to have those different crossover points based on their takes. Some schools, and I've learned this through counsel, public available information. Some schools are really heavily reliant on master's program entries and actually very low loans because they've gotten to that master's entry with 60 credits, right? And they've done a lot of that with cash or very low financial aid takes. So oddly enough, those schools that aren't graduating doctoral program graduates may be financially fairly healthy in the short term. Now, can they get to year 3 and 4 when they start to get to that loan cap? That's a discussion. Right. Other schools are really heavily invested, as you and I have talked about, some of the schools in our private conversations, they're really heavily invested in grad plus and dual degrees and all kinds of education. And I love education. I mean, bachelor's, associate's, master's, DAM, and PhD. Like I'm even thinking about an MBA. Like I'm forever a student. But when it comes to all of the data points that we're talking about, graduate outcomes, graduate success, and now loan cap is that is that smart business? And of course, no, it's not. So
Mm.
those schools may fall off the cliff, quicker. We've done an internal analysis. I feel really strong coming into the end of 2026, and
Mm.
I did a kind of a model all the way out to the end of 28. I feel good about where we're at. But
Mm.
I also have 17 pages of my board report showing them, okay, here's where we're going to make some of these switches.
Yeah.
Curriculum bloat, is a
Mm.
huge one. ACOM's at 2,675 hours. California's at 3,000 hours. Our program's at 3,375.
Mm.
Right. That 300 it's a matter of time before,
Mhm.
so I'm
Yeah.
looking at, I don't know if you've ever seen, I don't know if it's publicly available. If you can, go to the California Acupuncture Board and see if they have their curriculum and syllabi review.
Mm. I haven't
It's
seen it.
it's maniacal, in that it's like you have to have like word for word in the curriculum,
Hmm.
the course summary, and in the weekly outline of the summary of your syllabus, like exactly
Oh.
what curriculum point you're going to hit. It's really nuts. But I appreciate it because the good thing about accreditation, the good thing about California Acupuncture Board is it keeps you accountable and it keeps you digging into the data set to see like, where
Mhm.
can I get this? So in
Mhm.
this last couple months, I've already found a few places where I'm like, oh, we're running this whole class here
Mhm.
because we're trying to meet that data set, but it's not asking me to run a class. It's asking me to get this material, and I know I already get it here, here,
Yeah.
and here.
Yeah.
So I'm taking that 30 hours back. It's
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
gone. So
Yeah.
I found I think over the next, I don't know how quick it'll come, but I think maybe over the next year I can cut 300 hours off of our program.
Mm.
That's going to save students close to, I think it was $6,000 when I figured out the credits, but a
Mhm.
significant portion. And I loved, thank you for posting your chart on the list of acupuncture schools, their program expenses, the 4-year cap, and what's left over.
Mm. Yeah.
Because I've got some spreadsheets where I've done that as well. Yours was just really well laid out, and I
No,
love to see
thanks.
where Yosan was and where I
Mm.
want to be.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
because I also think from a competitive standpoint, of course, up until next July, I think you do have students that just say, what feels good, what
Yeah.
looks good, where'd
Yeah.
my friends go?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and this change in financial aid is going to be, what am I getting?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And can I
Mhm.
make it? And that's going to force all of us into a healthier position. Right.
Mhm.
It's painful, but it does. And so in that sense, I'm excited to adjust the curriculum. Maybe that
Yeah.
sounds insane, but I'm like, oh, what if we did this? And then as soon as I got our whole team on it, they were like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. We can actually pull this and pull this. And
Hmm.
like, it actually, like, oddly enough, we got excited about,
Yeah.
should have bummed us out maybe. But so anyway, I'm looking for, yes, it's difficult, but it's also like, it's going to force curriculum change, administrative
Right.
change, obviously professional change. And I think if we're all honest about it, and as you've been really clear, like, there's just going to be closures,
Mhm.
and unfortunate. I don't know how to balance it. Like, maybe that's healthy. Like, I'm going to say it is healthy,
Yeah.
and it's awful for those people going through the closure.
Right. I feel like there the I don't like how quickly this change is being forced
That's the big piece.
from the Department of Education. I really don't like that. It's not fair. Um, and at the same time, it is addressing like a real problem that I've seen, and I agree that that something needs to change. And so it's like, okay, I'm glad there's change. I don't like this having this fast, but there is an inevitability to it, and that higher education is just changing too. And a lot of those schools will close. And so a lot of it to me comes down to like, okay, what's like, um, like a decent way to do it? What's a dignified closure, right? Like, I don't like when schools close suddenly. I don't like that for the students, and I don't like it for the staff and the faculty. Um, but at the same time, I think that the 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 pressures have been so amped up that like the sudden closure thing is kind of like it's kind of a new thing for that to happen so often. And so I think like some of the systems and the perspective of that like have to kind of catch up to where it's like um because in the past it's like we're closing.
And we're not.
Yeah, we're not fine. It's very
Everything's
not fine.
fine.
Yeah, and so I think it's also like you said, like the perspective from students change. Like, hey, what am I getting out of this? I think the perspective from the faculty and the board of directors needs to change too, as far as like, let's see the past data, let's see where we're at, let's see the current projection. And I think too, like let's be real about what are our trigger points for dignified closure, right? At a certain point, like when is it better for this cycle to end?
Yep.
Or, I would say also like how do we merge and consolidate? Although that's like can be difficult too, because there's kind of rules around that.
Yep.
And at a certain point, you're not a great merger partner because you're kind of pulling
Seen that.
two schools in crisis joining doesn't work so well, or like what, like,
It's like two divorcees meeting.
yeah, it
Like
doesn't,
coming out of
yeah,
divorce court. Like, hey, you're single, I'm single too. Let's hang
yeah,
out.
yeah,
No,
we're
no, no,
being
no. You
in
both
this,
need to be alone.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think schools have to kind of know what they're about individually so they can be good consolidation or merger partners or something. Well, whatever. We'll see a lot, more of that,
Yeah.
I think, happening. Um, but we've talked for a long time already, and I really appreciate it because it kind of really flew by.
Yeah.
And I hope we can check in later in 2026, like after all of the loan cap stuff we know, you know, maybe after
September 15th.
September. Yeah.
September 15th, 2 weeks, because 2 weeks into the trimester is when you have your ad drop, everything's done.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So
That's
September
when everything
15th or
got
whatever
it.
your trimester starts. So by the end of September, essentially, the last week of September, every school will know what that first effect is.
Yeah.
If you're on a quarter system, maybe it's October. No, you might know in July, but I don't know. I'm so
Yeah.
bad with quarter systems. I don't know when the quarter would be.
Yeah.
No, they're still their third. If you're a quarter system, your third quarter should start prior to the loan cap changing. So it's going to be third trimester, fourth quarter. We'll have real.
Yeah. We're going to find out.
Yeah.
Soon.
So one thing we don't know, and I had to say this to our board of trustees, we don't know if the confusion in the marketplace, even for students who wouldn't be affected by the
right.
loan,
Yeah.
going to affect admissions. We don't. There's no way to know that. So it's about messaging.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I don't like how quickly it's happening.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair. Like prospective students and admissions, it's like you couldn't even, like you don't know what to tell students about their financial aid package because it's not defined.
Yeah. And we're getting enrollment inquiries for September.
Yeah.
We're starting to get that.
Yes.
And we're having to have the difficult conversation of like, I don't want you to take out a lot of loans, but if you start in May, you'll have more flexibility than if you start in September. And
right.
That is from a school standpoint, again, like my goal is not to put you in debt. I want you to have a successful career and flexibility.
Yeah.
But the real flexibility for you in this situation is to join in May.
Right. Yeah. There's some incentive to get in under the current system. Yeah.
But when I say that, I'm also not telling you to take out $10,000 per trimester.
Yeah. That's hard.
It's a weird, like, I'm not giving you, I'm giving you the keys, but I don't want you to, go out and drive off the road. I'm just kind of letting you know that the flexibility is here. So that's a weird balance point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Difficult times. There's a lot in flux.
Yeah.
But are there any other closing thoughts or reflections you
No, I
want to
hope
share before we close out?
I just hope that I think in the middle of our talk, I think maybe there's a tiny bit of hope in all of this.
Yeah, weirdly. Yeah, I don't know. We were talking about like winter solstice and I'm on that little upswing now. Um, that I do have hope to preserve so much of the good
Yeah.
um that comes from the education and the content, and to, I think, have an urgency around reforming the s- the the credentialing and the standards and the 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 outcomes for new graduates. Like, I really want to see good things happen there, and I think things are going to change. I think like a lot of good things could happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like this is the moment. There is no choice.
Yeah.
And just like the music industry, maybe
Mm.
maybe I'll send you. I wrote a post that I've never posted about the parallels between the music industry and Chinese medicine. And
Yeah,
maybe
I'd like that.
if you want, you can guest post it or something. But
Yeah.
just like the music industry, those companies that change and transform through streaming and figured out their models, they're bigger than they ever were today.
Yeah.
And all of those little ones that couldn't figure it out, the medium size, that's what usually gets gutted. It's the small guys and the big guys that survive.
Yeah.
The middle class is what gets killed.
Yeah.
They got thrashed in the music industry, and they're no longer. There are subdivisions under these bigger labels. And I don't want Chinese medicine to do that, where it's only University of whatever and University of whatever. It's like we need all those different size schools to be a successful ecosystem. But with this, we have to seize this moment and figure it out, or it will cease to exist, and you'll only have PTs doing acupuncture. And that's not what we want either.
Yeah.
So it is about survival of the medicine in its whole. We just have to figure it out.
Yes. I think that's a great closing thought.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me pause the recording here.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.